Eli Campbell here. One thing that makes Steamboat special is how many awe-inspiring people call our valley home. You could find yourself in line at the coffee shop next to an Olympian, or sitting on the gondola next to the founder of a world-renowned business. Our community produces and attracts the best of the best in their respective fields, but most are so humble about it you would never know. These extraordinary people are the common folk in the boat. Welcome to Common Folk in the Boat. Eli Campbell here with you alongside David Whitlinger from Billo Premium Cannabis. How are you doing?
I am great. Thank you for asking. Great. Just like, the tiger.
Yeah. Tony the Tiger,
Tony
great.
the Tiger, great.
Well, we're just coming out of September. It's a beautiful month here in Steamboat, but we've been enjoying this like Indian summer. It's been gorgeous.
Yeah, I as far as I'm concerned, it could stay like this for the next, 3-6 months. I don't care. This is by far my favorite time in Steamboat.
Well, as you know, I just got back from riding my bike down the California coast. Fun.
Wow, tough life you live there, buddy.
As if you haven't also done this, because
oh, that's right, I did that ride.
I know that you've done this
man.
ride. But what struck me is how I was riding along. The weather was not great. It was foggy and cold pretty much every day.
Wow.
And I remember being in Ventura just a few nights ago, calling my wife, and she was saying how beautiful it is. And I said, I'm in Southern California looking out at people wearing puffy coats and scarves.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I get back. It's warmer here. The colors are popping. It's beautiful.
So my daughter has since gone to school. She's now in Santa Barbara for school, and we were FaceTiming just the other day. Same thing. She's like, "Dad, wait, show me the yard again or something." And I held up, the mountain in the background and how it's all yellow and orange and red and all the colors. And she, even though she loves being by the beach, was very jealous of what we've got currently going on.
I have to say, when I rode through Santa Barbara, it was 65 degrees and gray.
It's
so
crazy.
It was crazy how few people were out on that beach.
I know. Go figure.
So we right now love where we are. I do want to take this moment to quickly acknowledge what's happening in the East Coast. My in-laws are from the Boone, North Carolina area, heavily impacted. A lot of friends and family heavily impacted. Luckily, all safe, but certainly we want to acknowledge what's going on there as we're talking about beautiful weather here.
Yeah.
So on that note, which is not a very good segue
way
at all.
Way to tee it up for me. Jeez, do you have a tissue? I'm going to cry.
We like to talk about what Billo's high on.
Oh, right, what we're high on. Let's just switch. All right, well, I'll be brief. I'll say this, and it's a little bit of a teaser. You're actually the first one I've told yet, Eli, but we're just on the verge of announcing our first of what I call first annual, but there's always got to be a first, customer appreciation party. And what we're doing, we have bought out the Old Town Pub, and we've booked a band. The band is Cycles out of Denver. It's going to be an exclusive invite only, wink, wink. If you know the Billo handshake, you're probably going to get in. But, hey, it's exclusive to, I would say, locals. Yeah. I mean, it's November 15th. Mark your calendar. It is going to be what I hope to be one of those legendary parties that we do every year and people start to look forward to. So I am way high on this whole first annual customer appreciation party brought to you by Billo. And we've got an incredible brand partner in Dialed In. They make these live rosin gummies. So who knows? Maybe those will be floating around. Yeah. I don't know. I can't say. We don't know.
It's the first annual. I like that you're already saying it's going to be an annual event. And to make it more exciting, you can take some notes from our guest today who used to own and run one of the most popular pubs, saloons in all of Steamboat. And some of the stories that he will tell, I don't think you could even get away with anymore.
I brought my notepad, though, because I want to glean some info from how he got away with some of that stuff.
Well, let's just say you might need to have some flares, a gorilla costume, and a parachute. And we'll see how how you can work that into your event. We are talking to Larry Lamb, former owner of the Tugboat for nearly 50 years. And, I should say more like nearly 40 years, but he's now 50 years from when he first started working at the tugboat. And we are going to have a great conversation with him. That is a supplement to a blog post that we're putting out there, 2-part blog series about the history of the tugboat, as we unfortunately saw it demolished earlier this summer.
Crazy.
So, we'll be right back with Larry Lamb. Welcome back to Common Folk in the Boat. We are happy to be joined by Larry Lamb, former owner of the Tugboat. How are you doing today?
Doing great. You're doing great. Thanks, Eli, for having me here.
Yeah, thank you for coming along. We have a great blog article that's going to be released in 2 parts about kind of the history of the tugboat, but we wanted to supplement that with a conversation with you and talk a little bit more about what is in that blog, as well as just kind of your history here in Steamboat. And one of the places we like to start is just kind of finding out where people, how they landed in Steamboat, what brought them here, and kind of go from there. So what's your story of coming to Steamboat?
My story of coming to Steamboat is one of those ones that written in books. I lived in San Diego, finished up after I got out of the service in Vietnam. Finished up school at San Diego State and lived on Mission Beach. And it was a beautiful place to live. But a friend of mine and I decided that after I had a cross-country trip and came through Steamboat to venture on. And as we did, he said, where do you want to go? And I said, well, he said he wanted to go to a lake in Alaska and live with his dog. And I said, that's way too cold for me. And I said, I ended up with the dog. And he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I'll be honest with you, I'd like to build a sailboat and sail around the world. He said, I was in the Navy, and I get seasick looking at a boat. And so I said, well, I just went through a little town called Steamboat Springs where a college roommate, Wally Cohen, lived, and decided to swing through there and visit him, and walked down the streets and was invited to a 4th of July party, offered a couch to sleep on, friends everywhere. The place was so friendly. When I got back to San Diego, I told Jerry, my friend, said, let's pack up and go to Steamboat. So I had my little Volkswagen Bug, and we borrowed a van because I'd just been robbed at my house, and they cleaned me out of everything but my dirty underwear. And towed my Bug up here, but behind a van, and that was it. And that was in '73.
So from a sailboat to Steamboat, you made it here.
Bingo.
And so what was the town like? I mean, you said it was friendly. We've talked to a few people that's kind of the stories. They landed here and they were offered a couch, or they didn't have anywhere to stay, but they found a place. And what was it like when you got here in '73?
I'm sorry to say I don't think Steamboat is becoming what it was then. Because it was everybody's open door. You didn't lock your car. You didn't do anything. You didn't have any problems. There weren't any hassles. And everybody had a job. They seemed to be able to make enough money to get by on and do whatever they want to do, which they came here to ski.
Yeah.
And live for the summer.
Yeah. It's all the whole you come for the winter, stay for the summer type of idea. But for you, what was the first job? What was the original plan when you got here?
I got here and I didn't have a job. And Tugboat, which was opened by a conglomerate of different individuals in '72, New Year's Eve, '72, '73. I got here in '73 and just wandered in the door, and they said, "You need a job?" And I said, well, yeah, sure I do. And so I started off as a doorman, and then went as a bartender, then as assistant manager, and then manager, until I became one of the owners. And that went through a long transition of different owners until it ended up with my last owner, who is since deceased. Hank Edwards, and we just went from there. It was just the two of us.
And when you were starting there just as the doorman, what was the operate ski scene like in Steamboat?
Oh,
back in
it
the
was
70s?
so casual, so nice. I mean, it was so wonderful.
And the base of the ski area has changed
Oh.
quite a bit in the 50 years since.
Substantially,
But
yes.
yeah, I mean, the tugboat has been, up until recently, one of those long-standing kind of places. Even when it wasn't open for the last decade or so, it was still
Yeah,
there
it was.
as
It was
the tugboat.
still was.
And I remember a time when there was the Inferno and Heavenly Days, but the tugboat was kind of the mainstay of the base.
It was kind of the nucleus. It was the mainstay because at the time we were doing breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and entertainment nightly, sometimes 5 to 7 nights a week, and so it was something for everybody that they could come and enjoy.
Now, the article that we're going to be releasing, there's some crazy stories in there about the early days of the tugboat. But one that I want to ask you about is parachuting, skydiving into Ski Time Square.
Some of my friends, unfortunately, some of them aren't here right now anymore. Skydiving happened to be the nouveau thing to do. And so I got into it with my good friend Brian Beatty, who isn't with us anymore. And we did night jumps into the Ski Time Square area. We did St. Patrick's Day, which were the St. Patrick's Day parade, which is the shortest parade in the world, but the most exciting with the most people. I have one story that I parachuted in on St. Patrick's Day, and my wife and son, my daughter wasn't born yet, my wife and son were standing down on the corner and parachuted in and tried to land on the deck. That sounds pretty stupid.
No. Super well planned. I'm sure
there were no liquid libations.
I'm sure there was at least a cocktail napkin with a nice schematic of the landing.
Hooked over, and back then we had a TV antenna on top of the chimney because that's how you got your signal from Denver. And I literally had to spread my legs to keep from straddling it, and hooked around, and the parachute wrapped around the stop sign right in front of my wife and my son at the corner right across the street from the tugboat. My son didn't speak the rest of the day.
It's traumatized.
That's my dad.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So as you were growing the reputation and the lore of the tugboat, you also started to attract some celebrities that were coming through, and there's some great stories.
We did. The tugboat became kind of known in the celebrity unit as a place you could go and you wouldn't have to be recognized. People would walk up to you and ask for autographs and pester you and everything else. And so, yes, we had quite a number of celebrities that showed up at the tugboat, whether it was a tugboat or whether it was the allure of being able to be there and not being bothered.
Yeah. And I think, one of the stories that I heard, or one of the things that I found interesting, obviously you were running a very popular bar in a time where there wasn't internet, there wasn't easy cell phone service or things like that. And so at that time, still the ski area would have to close down for weather issues, and people would come to the tugboat to find out if the gondola was open or
exactly.
if the mountain was open.
You mentioned that, the telephone, which I can still remember the telephone number, is 879-9990, which hung on the wall.
Yeah.
And it would ring, and we'd answer it. We didn't have a house phone. We'd answer it. And they said, well, listen, I'm coming to Steamboat, and I stayed up the street from the tugboat, but I can't remember the name of the place it was, and I want to make reservations. Oh, okay. Talking about the Thunderhead. That's it. Thank you. Click.
So you were like a de facto chamber of commerce /
Exactly.
tourism.
Exactly.
A central reservation.
And the ski patrol, as you mentioned. The ski patrol would, one of their first stops or first calls when they'd have somebody lost on the mountain.
Was you?
They'd come into the tugboat and they'd search the tugboat, or they'd call and say, okay, they're not here. They're not lost. They must still be up there somewhere. Okay, let's go back up and get them.
Yeah. They were probably at the tugboat more often than not, though.
Well,
How many?
The patrol lived there.
Yeah.
And they had their own set of tables, and they'd show up at 4 or 5 o'clock, and stay till the crows.
Yeah.
And that was their home.
And so as the tugboat, it was, kind of in its heyday back then, are there any particular moments or stories where you started to realize that this was more than just a restaurant and a bar, but this was really just part of the steamboat life?
There are a number, and I wish I could put my finger on all of them. But we had a filming crew come from Los Angeles that wanted to film in the tugboat, and also the Brandywine, which I owned downtown at that point in time, and do some filming of Western lore.
Yeah.
And that was kind of unique. You want to come to the tugboat? Okay, all right. We'll close it down for you.
Yeah.
And you can do whatever you want to do.
Wonder if I could find that video somewhere. Is it out there?
Yeah, I'm sure it's out there. I'm trying to think of the name of the actor that actually picked my son up and took him off in his trailer.
Kind of played the host of the show, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
We'll have to find that link,
Yeah.
Eli. Let's embed that in the.
I mean, YouTube's amazing for those sorts of things.
It's got to be out
Like
there.
I say, my wife is the memory of this whole program, and she would remember his name. Oh,
Maybe that's her.
speak-
Maybe, yeah, phone a
Phone
friend.
a friend? I love it.
oh,
Yeah.
that's my son.
Oh, well, maybe he'll know. No, wait. He's still traumatized from the.
Can't talk right now, son. Doing an interview. Bye.
I think that might be the first cell phone call we've actually had.
Yeah.
That's good.
At least he does still call you after the parachute incident. He's
Oh
still,
yeah. Oh no, we're still. We got 2 beautiful grandkids from him,
yeah.
and we still. He's still here in town. My daughter's in Denver, but yeah, we're still close.
So,
Well,
sorry, real
yeah.
quick segue. It's a burning question. I've always wondered, even back then when I used to go to the tugboat a lot, I never found out. It used to be above the main dining room. There was like a little half balcony and some doors.
Oh, yeah.
Were those actual doors to rooms, i.e. sort of brothel-esque, or were they
No,
just for show?
No, they were for show.
Okay.
They're for show, but there's a real story behind them. We had 4 ladies on the city council
Okay.
at that point in time, and when we put the addition to the west on the tugboat, I said, listen, it's a saloon. We've got to put a balcony up there, and we need some doors, for the ladies of the evening. And so I went to Denver and found some of those doors, which were great doors, and I was having name plaques made with the city council women names put on there, and I was told, I don't think this would be a good idea, Larry. And if you have any future plans in the future,
Yeah. You might need a permit for something.
You might need something. I
you
don't
never
think
know.
it'd be. So the names were the doors were still there, but their names weren't on it.
All right, I'm glad you put that to rest, because for the longest time I thought, yeah, this could be the legitimate, brothel from the old days.
Yeah, it was totally for looks.
Okay.
And obviously a lot of music came through the tugboat. Do you have any favorite musicians or bands that you saw there?
I wish I could remember because we had so many. I wish I could come up with them. I mean, think of the Big Head Todd and the Monsters.
Yeah.
And, we had the now you caught me with my memory. It's not so good anymore.
It's all right.
But how many nights? It was like 5 nights a week. You guys had
we
live
did
entertainment.
in the winter we did 7.
Dang.
Yeah.
And so
Who was your booker?
Well, one of my employees who was a manager decided to take over booking. That was Casey.
Okay.
And he started doing the booking, and it went from there. Other than that, it was me, and everybody said, "Well, we loved the music at the Tugboat. What kind of music was it?" And I said, "It was tugboat music." When somebody would want to interview and play, I would say, "Well, listen, do you play tugboat music?" He said, "What the hell is tugboat music?" And I said, "Well, it's just kind of a cross of country, rock, western, a little bit of everything mixed in, and it's something that you could move to, whether you're sitting down or dancing on the dance floor. It was something you could get involved in, and not something that blew your ears out or whatever. So it was tugboat music.
Hopefully, it made people whatever music made them thirsty too.
Yeah,
that's kind of the point, right?
Well, they were thirsty.
And I remember, I mean, that was the beauty of that venue. I mean, it wasn't large, right, Larry? I mean, it wasn't big. So even if like a Big Head Todd or some other bigger name at the time, we probably weren't necessarily big, but you had a few. I mean, you're up close and personal. I mean, you're practically.
No, you're right there.
Strumming the guitar right there.
Which brings up another point. The neighbors across Torrey and Plum across the street complained and sent police and noise monitors out to try and shut us down, and they eventually put air conditioners on all their north side facing condos, and then they paid to put us triple pane windows in, and then we paid to have double walls put on that side facing them to try and appease everybody. But that didn't make any difference to the backside because it came out that way, and people come up to me, "Oh yeah, I could hear your music all the way till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock."
See, I lived in the Ski Time Square condos back then, but I was in my young 20s at the time, and
so you were into it.
So yeah, that didn't matter to me. That's when I knew it was time to finally go home. That's when I couldn't hear the music anymore. But I mean, I think obviously the tugboat has been such a strong part of the steamboat culture, and there's so many stories. I mean, you talk to a lot of people, and they have their tugboat story. I still remember my wife now when we were first dating. It was at the tugboat. I ran into some people. I introduced her as my girlfriend, and she turned around to me and said, "I'm your girlfriend?" And like, ooh. Yeah. But there have been relationships that have started at the tugboat. There have been relationships that have ended there, I'm sure.
I met my wife there, and as many other people met their wives there.
Yeah.
My wife said, "You know what you really need to do? You need to have a party and advertise it well, to have everybody that's met their wives or their husbands there, and to all show up at one time." I said, "That's a great idea." So we did it, and it was amazing. All the couples that had met there.
All the future generations of steamboatians that have started at the tugboat.
Oh, exactly. I mean, you go through the kids that are, their grandkids are there.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but I have one story to tell with James Romick. Came in with his kids after skiing, and they sat down and they're having their après-ski martini or whatever, and all of a sudden one of their kids was gone. They couldn't find him. I said, don't worry about it. I said, there's an alarm on the back door. You can't get through the kitchen without the cook seeing them, and there's no way else for him to go. So I went on a search, and this is when we had moved all the restrooms upstairs. And I got up there, and I heard this door going ka-kunk, 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 ka-kunk. I look in here, and I believe it was Dalton. Opened the door. He couldn't open the door because he was so small, and it kept hitting his feet. And so he went running by me and said, "Oh, I got to get to my mommy and daddy." So he ran down there, and I went down there to see Jason. I said, "What I found him. What's the deal? Is everything okay?" He says, "Yeah, I guess so." He said, but said he found a gum machine up there on the wall. He was sitting there chewing gum he picked out of the urinal. Oh. The whole family got up and
Delicious.
stormed out. I went, I'm sorry. I told you it was safe.
Yeah. Learning lessons the hard way there, I suppose. I wanted to kind of ask you, though, we talked about there's the parachuting in, all the different, St. Patrick's Day, all the different things that you've done. You kind of touched on it earlier. Do you think any of that could happen in a steamboat in the way it is today? And how were you able to get away with it so easily to do those sorts
I
of things?
really don't believe that it could happen at all.
Yeah.
To be very honest with you. The laws were very loose. The police were very amenable.
Everybody wasn't looking out for liability.
No,
for
it wasn't a
things.
liability. We had the river race, which is the world famous tugboat river race. We had 5,000 people in the river, 5,000 people on the side of the river. We had 3 helicopters working it, a Japanese film crew. And we took an insurance policy out to that for $1 million in case of some unfortunate accident. And we bought that insurance policy for $100. And today, there's no way in the world that they would have let you do it, number one.
Yeah.
And number two, nobody would insure you. It just wouldn't work. I mean, the river race. When people think about it, the tugboat river race, it's just kind of synonymous.
Yeah. And as we have moved into kind of the present day-ish, I was, like I said, living in Ski Time Square when the whole surrounding area was purchased and demolished except for the tugboat.
Right.
And I think there was kind of this beacon of still hope, that area would still be a rendezvous point, a late night point, a fun point, but once everything else around it was no longer there, it certainly made it tougher for the tugboat. What was that whole time like?
Well, I just dug my heels in at that point in time, and I said, we're not going anywhere. We still have a lease, and I could still, the Sheraton was our lessor at the time, and I said, I'll go over and talk to him, see what we can do. And so we basically ended up paying our percentage rent to them at that point in time, which was $100,000, and they gave us another 10 years lease. And so then when they started tearing things down, I said, well, wait a minute, where are you going to stop here? Well, we're working on it. And so I talked to the contractors and the construction people and the Sheraton again, and they stopped right at the wall.
Yeah.
They tore everything else down, and everybody said, well, how did you do that? And I said, well, I was crossed fingers and hope and prayer and a little bit of negotiating.
And it was the tugboat,
Yeah.
It was one of those things that, and we were kind of talking about it before we started recording. that was 2008. They still haven't rebuilt around it. And I think that was the thing, is like you can't tear the tugboat down unless you've got a plan to rebuild something.
I have one story. We were sitting, when they started to tear it down, we were sitting on the deck. A couple of friends and I were sitting on the deck. And Checkpoint Charlie, I don't know if you remember Checkpoint Charlie, which was a booth out there in the middle of the island. And they used to have somebody manning it, Ranger Ron. And Checkpoint Charlie was there. And so the significance of tearing Ski Time Square down was tearing down Checkpoint Charlie. So they came in with a what do you call them, the grabber?
Yeah, like a excavator.
Excavator.
Yeah.
And crunched it and everything. And the city council was out there. They started walking back from there to their cars up in Ski Time Square, and you could hear, "Boy, we did it! We did it! Didn't we do it? And wasn't that great? We got them to tear down Ski Time Square." And I'm looking at them going, "Well, what are you talking about?" And I said, "Think of the tax base. Think of the sales.
Yeah.
Think of the shops, the owners, everything else." And they tore it down, and a number of years just stayed empty.
Yeah, it became the Tugboat Island.
Really.
The loose term, yeah. Oh my gosh.
And so, how long were you able to keep it going after everything else was kind of demolished around you?
Well, now you're going to
really test your memory.
Test me for dates.
Yeah.
And I believe we were out of there in 2008, and they started tearing it down in 2000 or 1999. But we stayed a good 7 or 8 years.
Stayed a while, yeah. And as we've talked about, the building still remained, and I'd always heard rumors that something might go into the tugboat space for a period of time, and various reasons, lease restrictions or other things why it wouldn't, but it was still there. And I think for longtime locals, it was, you had great memories, but it was almost sad that it was just there and empty.
Well, and it was so run down.
Yeah.
I mean, the owner could have at least put a coat of paint on it. Could have done something. I mean, but it would look so run down and so beat up.
Put a what would you call a landing pad for a a parachuter?
But it was a shame that it was allowed to just be run down until they finally tore it down.
And this past summer they tore it down, but there was a gathering of a lot of people that came together to kind of see the last days of the tugboat.
That was generated. I'm not exactly sure who generated it or the individual, but a group of people got on social media and said we're gonna gather at the tugboat just to say our song. It's our last hurrah, and it was bittersweet.
Yeah. Were you surprised how many people showed up?
Oh yeah, it was great. There were 80 or 100 people there.
Yeah. Lots of stories.
Oh, and the stories. I mean, again, you go back to the people that were married there, the people that met there, the friends. People came from around the state.
Yeah.
To be there.
Yeah.
For it.
And we were mentioning you were wearing your old tugboat shirt there. You probably have a lot of the memorabilia.
I don't have that much anymore, but just for you guys, I put this on.
Yeah.
It sits in my closet.
Speaking of, that's what always reminded me, or I should say this, the one thing that sticks in my mind was how much cool memorabilia was inside that you'd probably collected over the course of 30, 40, 50 years. That kind of stuff. Was that organically placed, or was that, your plan? Did people just sort of leave signs behind? How did that come to be?
I like the way you put it, organically placed. No, everything in there came from an individual or individuals, and they wanted it to be in the tugboat. Whether it be a picture, whether it be a life preserver, whether it be a set of skis from Olympians, whatever it happened to be. It came at the end when, I don't want to be too harsh about this, but the idiot that I sold it to, he ran into the ground. The tax man came, put the padlocks on the door, and that was it. When they came in and started selling it, selling stuff off, pictures off the wall, posters, pictures, skis, whatever it happens to be, it was a very emotional moment that I personally I want that, 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 I want to keep that, and nobody would bid against me. And the tax man sitting there just shaking his head going, oh, okay, give it to him.
Yeah.
which felt good in my heart, which I still have a lot of it still at my house.
And I think that speaks to our community here. There's people aren't going to just take advantage of someone who's meant so much to the community and brought so much joy just because there's an opportunity
Right.
to. And I think that's one of the things that makes Steamboat a special place.
Well, it was. I mean, and people came to me and said, no, that's Larry's, belongs to him.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it's the community's changed. It's changed a lot, certainly since the 1970s. It's changed a lot since I've been here, since the late 90s. But there's still that sense of that carryover, I think, of a culture of looking out for one another.
Well, there still is. And Steamboat will be Steamboat as long as I'm alive, I guess. But it's not what it used to be.
Yeah. And to that end, I think things always change and there's always progress. But do you have any, not that you have much of a say, but do you have any wishes or dreams of what would become of the Ski Time Square property?
I'd like to see it be toned down a little bit and not be high-rise condos and whatever, which is probably inevitable.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it be toned down a little bit and be a little more warm and welcoming to people.
And with enough landing zone for skydiving, right?
I think the stop signs. No, they took that stop sign out of it.
I'm with you, and I'll say this, and I don't know if it's a fair analogy, but you see what's happened with the T-bar, sort of filling that void. This is how many years it's been around.
Exactly.
And again, it started as a double wide that was a ski patrol, outpost or something. I don't know, but it's turned into sort of not at all compared to the tugboat, but this idea that it is that toned down sort of locals place, and that's what we as people that live here want. So I'm all on board with you, Larry. If there were any sort of public opinion, I would like to see whatever goes in there preserve some of that, if it was even possible.
I don't know if it's possible. People would come in and say, "What do you think is going to happen to Steamboat?" I said, "Well, I hate to say it, but it's going to turn into an Aspen or a Vail." And I lived here in Steamboat when I used to go to Aspen, and I used to think it was great. Now I don't think it's great anymore. I don't think Vail's great anymore, and Steamboat's slipping into that slot.
Yeah. I was actually driving through town the other day and just kind of looking around and kind of seeing all the original building that are still downtown, and then some of the newer builds that they've tried to kind of incorporate in. But it's nice to see the Steamboat Art Museum building, which still has the rocks from the quarry. That's where the quarry came from. Or I think the Old Town Pub is, now that the tugboat's been torn down, it's like one of the last remaining original pubs in town.
I pray and hope that they have the staying power and the ownership, the lease, whatever it happens to be able to hang in there to be
Yeah.
be the Old Town Pub still.
Yeah, because it's just like the tugboat. You have the crazy stories, people riding horses into the bar and things
yes,
like
we had
that. And so it's fun to have those places and to hear the history behind them. And like I said, we're excited to release this article that kind of dives into some of this a little bit deeper. But really appreciate your time, kind of talking to us a little bit more about it, and just kind of the impact that you've had on the community, and also the many generations of people of steamboats that don't even know that their history started at the tugboat.
Well, I thank you for coming to me, my wife, and wishing to express this.
Yeah.
And so that maybe somebody that hasn't heard it will hear it, and it's history.
It's history, and I think it's an important part of Steamboat. I think that we all moved here because it's not Aspen and it's not Vail, and
exactly.
And I think that it is really important to tell the stories of why we're not those places, and hopefully hold on to that as, again, we inevitably progress and evolve, but still want to hold on to that history. So.
Oh, you're 100% right.
Yeah. Larry Lamb, thank you very much. One of the common folk of the boat.